Hello, fellow Morrowind Modding Showcase fans. Tonight we're switching things up, and the amazing Darkelfguy will be the interviewee for the 27th interview episode. His YouTube channel has been running for over 3 years now, and it's about time that he sat on the other side of the table. So, thanks for letting me interview you, Darkelfguy.
And thanks for, agreeing to do this interview. I know you've been pretty busy recently.
Yep, working on my own mods, and working on moving from the house and such has been keeping me pretty busy. But yeah, I'm glad we could get together and do this.
Oh yeah, me too, and hopefully this should be rather interesting.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you've done 26 of these interviews with different modders so far, and this will be the first time we finally get some of these questions asked of you. And we've had a number of users submit some questions, so I think it should be pretty interesting. So I'd say let's jump right into the questions. We'll start off with some of the boilerplate ones that you ask of the different modders that you typically interview, and then, like I said, we'll hit a few user submitted ones. I think they came from the late Bedsoft forums, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, we had quite a few submitted from there, and to be honest, I'm a bit terrified of being on the other end of this mic here.
Well, you've had lots of experience, so just not being the interviewee. So we'll get started here with the first question. So, Darkelfguy, when did you first start playing Morrowind and the Elder Scrolls in general?
Oh, I've been thinking about this question a bit, and well, I'd say the first time I started playing the Elder Scrolls series was with Morrowind, obviously. And my first experience with it was in the summer of 2002. I was only 12 at the time, going on 13. And, I wasn't really much of a gamer at that point. I was still, your typical kid. I did kid-like stuff, like frolicking through meadows. And if I was, feeling especially not to, maybe frolicking through some wheat fields. But, I just didn't really do much in the way of gaming. But my best friend did, and he would usually invite me over to watch him play video games, and, that's what I was doing in summer of 2002, is that he invited me over to watch him play something called Morrowind. And my experience with games up to that point was, incredibly limited. What I was familiar with was games like Spyro the Dragon, and, a lot of those other, Sony PlayStation classics. So, what I was expecting was, your typical 3D world with invisible barriers everywhere, and a very limited linear path of where you can go, and a very limited number of items that you can pick up. And the thing that strikes me right away is that he didn't seem to follow any particular, path. There didn't seem to be any invisible barriers. He was just running all over the place. Sometimes he would follow the road, sometimes he'd just run off into a random field, or, climb up a random hill, and this was completely mind-boggling to me at the time, because, I had never really seen anything like that before. It's like there's always an invisible wall. And I asked him about this, and he's like, there are no barriers. And that just completely blew my mind. They can just explore this entire world with no limitations. And then he did this second crazy thing of just going into some random slave shack, I think it was somewhere in the Ascadian region, and just picking everything up in there, like the dishes, the utensils, the bottles. And that was the second thing that blew my mind. It's like, I never played a game like that before, where you can just pick up everything. I mean, it's complete madness. You destroy the environment. And, that's really where I fell in love with Morrowind, because that concept right there, that unlimited freedom and potential, was something I had never seen before in a video game. And I went home that day, and then went to the store and bought Morrowind for the PC, and I guess you can say the rest is pretty much history.
Oh yeah, I think for many of us, that first experience with the game and all that, the open world and being able to steal anything you wanted, but finally you might find out what the consequences are later when you get sent to jail, or somebody just outright kills you whenever you touch their stuff. So it was a pretty eye-opening experience the first time I played it, as well as many other people.
Oh yeah, I found out right away about that, people attacking you thing. I murdered so many people in my first game of Morrowind.
Yep, and you'll find out early on that you don't have a house somewhere to stay. So I remember, you always, you find a vacant house, or maybe you make a vacant house.
Oh yeah, my go-to was the pawnbroker in Balmora, since she was, all alone in her shop there. It's like, okay, I'll just kill you, take all your shop goods, and just make a home here.
Yep. As long as we kind of keep that sort of activity in the game, it's a fun thing to do. But yeah, let's move on to the next question. So, getting into some modding stuff. So, how long did it take after you first started playing Morrowind before you got an itch to mod it?
Oh, I would say it was maybe less than a year. It was after Blood Moon released in 2003. That's when I, first started exploring the modding community, and I don't know if you remember back then, but the Morrowind modding community was quite active. I mean, there were dozens of modding sites and hundreds of mods, sometimes 100 mods getting released in a single week. It was complete madness. So I spent a lot of time just exploring all these different modding websites. Like you had Morrowind Summit, you had, that one website that just had modders' resources on it. Don't really remember what it was called. Gamers Rome, Morrowind Files, Morrowind Source, which is what the Morrowind Nexus and the Nexus website is called today. It started out as being called Morrowind Source, and it wasn't really a big mod database at the time. It was sort of, I guess you would call it a modding backwater. It was mostly a forums at that point, not so much a mod database. And then you had all these, big and crazy mods like Sea of Destiny, City of Fire, Jajora, and the Middle Earth total conversion mod, and all these other total conversions like Dragon's Breach. And, of course, Tamari built, and, those were the big mods that really captured my imagination. It's like, I want to do something like that, Build my own total conversion, or build a giant landmass, or something like that. I think everyone gets tempted by that, and that's when I decided to, try and start modding myself. But, I didn't really get the hang of the construction set for a while there. I don't think I released my first mod until December of 2003.
Yeah, the Morrowind community is pretty. It's changed a lot. It's changed a lot over the years, and I think I personally was a little bit later to join, just because I played for many years on Xbox before I really discovered the wonders of what can be done on the PC. But the other thing amazing about it is, you're mentioning all those sites and stuff, but it was also, and it still is to an extent, well, not to an extent, but it still is, it's a global phenomenon as well, because you had Wee Land, the French side, and I don't know what the Italian side was, but you had Italian groups, and you had the Russian community, the German community, and stuff. Yeah, I think nowadays the main one of those that hasn't been absorbed into the I guess English community is the Russian community on full rest. But it's pretty amazing, how large the community became for the game.
Oh yeah, and the thing that's kind of hard to imagine these days is a lot of those early mods had tens of thousands of downloads. At one point in time, a mod could have been expected within 1 year of release to hit close to 10,000 downloads, which is something that's completely mind-boggling today, since we're likely to get a few hundred, I think.
Oh yeah, yep. Um, things are a little bit slower nowadays, but the community is still pretty impressively active. I know you mentioned some numbers, and every once in a while in some of your videos about how many mods Morrowind got released for Morrowind compared to Oblivion and such. So it's still pretty active, although obviously slowed down a little bit over the years.
Oh yeah, a fun little tidbit actually on the Oblivion front. The Morrowind modding community has actually been gaining on the Oblivion modding community. We might actually overtake them in total mod releases this year, which is kind of crazy if you think about it.
It is. It is. I'll leave it to you to track that, but I'm curious to see how it ends up looking. All right. So next question. So you alluded to this a little bit before. So regarding your first mod, how did you get the idea for it?
Well, my first mod was called Temple Teleports, released in December 2003. The basic idea for it was to add a transportation network like the Guild of Mages, but geared towards the Dunmeri temples. And, basically, I got the idea from it because I was looking at all the other gameplay mods that had already released, and that was one of the only areas that no one had really done anything in, was making a transportation network for all the Dunmeri temples. So that's what I decided to do, is I decided to just add these teleport NPCs I could send you to all the other temples, including Mournhold for some reason, which I realize now is just completely main quest breaking, so terrible idea. Really, the mod itself was of pretty poor quality and construction. I just added these teleport, travel markers to anywhere in the temple, so there was no real sort of cohesion there. It's not like you were teleported in front of the guild guide, like in the Mages Guild. You were just teleported usually to the front of the temple, and then just had to wander through the temple somewhere until you could find the teleport NPC again. Well, it was pretty poorly constructed. I released an update for it in 2009, but anyways, yeah, that's the basic idea for it, and how I came about it.
Yep, I think that tale is pretty common for a lot of new modders. I think that very first mod that you release, even the first one you release, can be kind of rough, but definitely the first one you start working on can be pretty messy, and it's a learning experience, obviously. All right, and the next question is, what draws you to modding video games?
Well, probably the same thing that draws everyone to modding video games, the sort of concept of creating your own world. It's a lot easier than, building your own actual game. You just go into the construction set and, start adding in your own bits into a pre-existing world. And it feels amazing when you build something that is good, and, you get to play it in game, and you get to explore it. And there's just, something about that you don't really get with just playing a regular video game, It's like that's something you've created, and it's just an amazing experience. It's really quite intoxicating, I would say.
Yes, it is. Yep, I can relate to that. And also the sharing aspect of it can be pretty rewarding as well.
Oh yes, that's always fun too, is to release your mods out into the community, and get feedback on it, and just sort of contribute to adding a new experience for other people to find. Especially after you've played a lot of mods yourself. It feels like you're giving back.
Right, it does. Just increasing the wealth of mods in the community, and the options people have for playing the game in different ways. It's a lot of fun, like you said. It is intoxicating. So hey, the next question is, do you do any planning before you start a mod? How does that process flow into the mod creation itself?
Well, the answer is, sometimes I do a lot of planning. I think a lot of people have probably watched one of the small Morrowind series where I, had that quest design document. Sometimes I go into excessive detail of planning, and other times, I just sort of, do a shotgun approach where I just open up the construction set and just stop messing around. As for the actual mods I released, I think most of them were planned ahead of time. The mods I do shotgun-wise don't seem to get actually finished all that often, but basically what I do is I write down an idea, and that's the first step to building a mod, is writing down the idea. Usually it's a basic premise, like something extremely vague, like a summary of what I want to be in the mod, like, a quest or, a dungeon or something like that. Just a rough idea of what I want. And then I go into the construction site, usually start messing around with things, putting things together. If it's a dungeon mod, I'll start there. And if it's a quest mod, I'll start, writing characters, try and get a feel for the characters in the mod. I'll try and get into the sort of headspace of these characters, try and figure out their personality, what they're like, where are they from. Usually I'll try and find a town or city on one of the old maps of Tamriel, and, try and write a background where these characters came from there, their families were of, such class or stature, they came to Morrowind for this or that reason, and they're in whatever bit of trouble that they're in right now due to this or that action in their past, and I try to figure out their motivations from there. And really, the quest mods, they require a lot of planning in that regard.
Yeah, and you mentioned the mods that get started and don't ever get finished. So what percentage of the mods that you start on, you get to the point where you're in the construction set, do you think actually make it out to a release?
Percentage-wise, maybe 10%. It's pretty low. If you count all the mods I've released, and not just the ones that are available right now, it's a bit higher, since I actually did release about a dozen mods between 2003 and 2005, but I deleted all of them except for the first mod I released, Temple Teleports. But on the whole, it's a pretty low percentage.
Yeah, I think that's common with a lot of modders, I think. You get an idea, you start on it, and either you lose interest or get busy or whatever. There's a lot of different reasons that can cause that. But so also talking about modding. So if we start talking about influences, so are there other non-T Elder Scrolls games that have influenced your mods that you've created?
Well, this is sort of a tough one. Sometimes you get influenced by games or books without really quite realizing it. I would say probably my biggest non-Elder Scrolls influence would have to be, well, books and literature. I read quite a lot. I read hundreds of books, or used to anyway, especially fantasy books and history books. Those are my, cup of tea that I like to have each day practically, is, just a little bit of reading from some fantasy or history book there. And I think a lot of my mods probably show influence from, those two things in particular. As for games specifically, trying to wrap my head around it, maybe a little bit of influence, let's see, I want to say Risen? Maybe just a tad bit of influence from Gothic as well. I played a little bit of Gothic 3 and Gothic 2. And, well, I guess maybe a little bit of influence from World of Warcraft if it comes right down to it, but it's been a long time since I played that, obviously.
Yeah, I think mod influences can come from a variety of sources, as you just expounded on. And I know another thing that a lot of modders like to do is listen to music while they're working. Is that something that you do? And if so, what sort of music do you listen to?
Oh yeah, I naturally listen to a ton of music, really all sorts. And let's see, I listen to Two Steps from Hell, all that epic trailer music that they do sometimes. Other times I listen to what used to be Classic 99, but which is now the Radio Arts Foundation in St. Louis. I like that, sort of classical music. And, other times I just like to listen to swing or electric swing music, and because, that stuff is really energizing. And sometimes, when you're doing a tedious task in modding, like, say, placing hundreds of rocks in a cavern to make it feel natural, sometimes you need that sort of upbeat, high-energy music just to, keep yourself from blowing your brains out from boredom.
Oh yeah, there's definitely some parts of modding that you got to get done to make the mod look good, but it's not necessarily the fun part. So yeah, I can relate to that. I think a lot of other modders can too. But you know what? It's something that you got to go through. So whenever the players finally get to experience your mod, it looks good and plays well. So while you're modding, you're placing those rocks and such. Are there any particular resources other than your own, of course, that you like to use in your mods?
Well, truth be told, I'm not really big on modders' resources. I think I've released, the official mod count anyway that I've released is 6 or 7 mods, and only one of those has any modders' resources in it at all. And that was of Houses and Abodes? Oh, no, wait. Of Dungeons and Abodes. Good grief, I'm forgetting the names of my own mods. But yeah, that was of Dungeons and Abodes. I used 2 resources in that, a wooden mannequin resource and an ingredient storage container resource. Normally, though, I don't really use resources. Those 2 resources in particular, seem appropriate for a house mod. So I guess those would be my go-to right there.
Sorry, I was in a different area. So the question was, how much do you use the community to get feedback and motivation for your mods?
Oh, I would say probably a fair amount. I mean, obviously, it's always good to hear from people who, enjoy your mods, and, also people who run into issues, because that's pretty important, to, fix your mods. I think, basically, one of the most important bits of feedback I got early on in my modding career actually came from Quatlus, who gave a very harsh but, fair bit of criticism on one of my less successful and planned out mods in 2004, and that really helped me a lot, actually. It sort of snapped me out of this, oh, I'll just put something together in the construction set in one evening and then throw it out onto Morrowind Summit the next day. Made me realize that I need to put a bit more planning into my mod releases. So yeah, I would say I use feedback from the community a fair amount, though I wouldn't say I'm overly reliant on it either.
Yeah, and if we're talking about influential members of the community, man, Quatlus was a big one. I think for a lot of people, back on Morrowind Summit and then Planet Elder Scrolls. I mean, I know on a number of my mods, you'd get if it was a bad mod, you'd hear about it. You'd get a scathing but polite review of your mod, and I got that on a number of mine, and it felt really rewarding whenever eventually, I don't even remember which one of my mods it was, but on one of mine where I eventually got a very positive review, nothing bad to say about it from Quatlus, and that felt really good.
Oh yeah, I sort of missed out on that because, after waiting for a long time and doing a lot of planning, I finally released my first good mod 2 months after she had died, so I kind of missed out on that. But yeah, she was a major influence on the community. And, she really was the one that made me want to become a mod reviewer. It's like she was the standard upon which to, sort of aim towards in mod reviewing. And I still don't know if anyone's actually surpassed that standard to this day.
Yeah, I agree. I was pretty sad whenever I heard the news a number of years ago. I actually um I guess it was a few years ago now. I put together a memorial mod of sorts that I put onto Great House Fliggerty. So yeah, she was very influential. It was pretty sad whenever she left us.
Oh yeah, I've been, meaning to do an in memoriam episode on Morrowind Modding Showcases. It's just, the issue is I don't know if I'm really the right person to, host such a thing. It seems like something that should be done by perhaps a more somber personality.
Yeah, I can relate to you there. I think I'm kind of in the same boat. Um, all right, so moving on to the next question we've got on the list here. So, still talking about other modders. So, what mods and modders currently have your attention in the community today?
Well, I don't know if this is an appropriate response, but all of them? I mean, obviously, as the host of Morrowind Modding Showcases, I take a look at all mods, and there are certainly some, talented new modders, and some new modders who, perhaps, need a bit of practice, but, they can, even, the worst modder on the planet that you can think of can become a great modder with time and practice, and, it's exciting to think about what some of these new modders might be capable of in another year. I've seen some, truly lackluster modders become some truly brilliant modders in the past few years. And, that's one of the exciting things from my position as, being a mod showcase, is seeing their development and their gradual move towards making these just beautiful and breathtaking mods. But as for, perhaps more specific modders that I'm keeping an eye on, there is, of course, you, with your Lyithdonea mod. I'm also quite interested in Voddenfell Tribe's Questos mod, Carrot Ferret's Empire mod, and, obviously Tamari Built, Province Cyrodiil, Storm Home of the Nords. I'm rather interested if Roskira is ever going to develop into anything. And, oh jeez, I'm probably forgetting someone. Oh, right. Danae's, Big House mod, Pegasus Estate. Really looking forward to that. And really, just about everyone. Tidy, Flash 113, Mike and Ike. all of them. I really like seeing what they put out and, playing around with it. And the advantage of being a showcase is that I get to play a lot of mods I otherwise wouldn't. And I'm really starting to see the sort of evident quality that mods I otherwise, wouldn't have even considered before have, like texture mods and, more cosmetic additions. It's like, this, the advantage of being a host here is that I get to play all these mods and really see their merits for sometimes the first time.
There's a lot of cool stuff going on in the community right now, and yeah, like you said, where you sit, you've got a pretty good view of everything going on. So, that's cool to hear. So the next question is kind of leading off from that. Obviously, you like you said, you see a lot of mods as you're doing this channel here. So what are there any types of mods you'd like to see for Morrowind that maybe you haven't run across yet in all the testing you've done?
Well, specific mods that I haven't run across yet. I suppose, I would like to see more faction mods, I guess, we don't really have a ton of them in this community. We have the Illuminated Order, we have a few Adventurers Guild mods and things like that, but what I would like to see is, a faction mod that would allow you to do more construction. Like, there's that construction mod, but, something a bit more developed than that, with more quests, and, maybe a mod that would allow you to develop up Vvardenfell a bit. This Vvardenfell was just opened up for colonization in 3E417. That was just, 10 years ago from Morrowind's perspective. There's a lot of untapped natural resources. Having a mod that would allow you to join a faction and start multiple colonies around Vvardenfell, that would be a really cool mod in my estimation. That is something I would really like to see. And, aside from that, epic dungeons are always something we don't have enough of, in my opinion. Always need more epic dungeons, so obviously there are, already a fair few of those released out there already.
Yeah, you were mentioning faction mods, and I know someone recently on the Morrowind Discord was talking about developing. They were working on I think a new Assassin's Guild or something. But I agree with you. There's definitely a shortage there. There's also I know one other one. Somebody added a joinable Dark Brotherhood one, which was pretty good. It was based around, definitely heavily influenced by the way that the guild was portrayed in Oblivion and stuff like that. But I think as a player, faction mods are a lot of fun. You can rise through the ranks and go on quests and that sort of thing, and it gets to tell a story. I can understand why you'd be drawn to that sort of a mod as well.
Oh yeah, I've always dreamed of doing a faction mod myself, but that's just not going to happen at this rate.
Yeah, it's a pretty big time investment and something you probably can't spend the time on given, your current release schedule for Morrowind Modding Showcases.
Oh yeah, it's hard to do any modding at all right now with, the release schedule, unfortunately.
Yeah, we'll keep our fingers crossed that we'll get another mod from you. Oh, that last quest mod you released was a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you think so. It is a lot of fun to put these quest mods together. It's just, a faction mod obviously takes a lot more planning and design.
Yes, it does. And moving on to the next question. This one's about Open Morrowind. So obviously this is something that this Open Morrowind has really advanced in the last year. And as I don't follow it too closely, but as far as I know, I'd heard it is now feature complete, and there's actually some pretty impressive forks for the project, which is developed like a multiplayer fork, which I think there's some videos around YouTube and that sort of a thing you can watch of people getting together in Morrowind, different players playing the game together, which is pretty cool to be seeing today. But speaking of that project, do you have any plans to make any Open Morrowind mods?
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens with the Open CS. Right now I would say no, because, well, my mods have always been geared towards maximum compatibility across as many platforms as possible. If you've played any of my mods, you'll notice that they all use vanilla Morrowind for the most part and do not require Tribunal or Blood Moon. because not everyone, even to this day, surprisingly enough, does not have Tribunal or Blood Moon. So I'm a bit wary of adding a new requirement to my mods like OpenW, but, if they add some cool features to the OpenCS, like dynamic water heights or, world spaces, that would definitely tempt me to, go over there and start building mods for OpenMW instead.
Yeah, for sure. And I know another thing as far as Open Morrowind goes is that I think for certain types of mods right now anyway, you actually can just change the file extension from, the Open Morrowind file format to a typical ESP plugin format for Morrowind, and just changing that sometimes for some types of mods works. So there's a possibility down the line that, even if you don't specifically mod for Open Morrowind, maybe some of your future projects will be compatible.
Oh yeah, from what I understand is that they're aiming to make sure that as many mods as possible are compatible with Open Morrowind. So probably most of my mods, minus some perhaps scripting syntax issues, should be compatible, I think.
So I know you mentioned spaces. Are there any other features, systems, or mechanics that you would be looking forward to potentially being de-hard coded in Open Morrowind?
Definitely dynamic water heights. I think that has a lot of potential for creating some interesting and unique locations. I mean, that's something I'm always, interested in. You've talked before in the past about how I like to decorate the exteriors of some of my locations with all these flowers and trees everywhere. And it would be nice to have some actual dynamic streams and ponds and things to add to that as well. And also, dynamic water heights would be a massive boon to dungeon mods. I mean, just think of the potential there. You can have cavern streams and waterfalls all in these dungeons, and have the player be able to follow along with them. That would be, make for a fantastic experience. And that's something that, Skyrim in particular has taken advantage of. I mean, the dungeon design in Skyrim is, better than Morrowind, I have to say. They've got more of these, interesting little features here, like those dynamic water heights, where you have all these interesting different environment types when you explore dungeons in Skyrim. And, that would be the first step to being able to do something like that. Morrowind is having, those basic underground streams and rivers and things of that nature.
Our Morrowind mod reviewer conceding that Skyrim is superior with dungeons than Morrowind. That's pretty shocking, Darkelfguy.
Well, I mean, I don't like that much about Skyrim, but I have to concede that their dungeon design is superior to that of Morrowind. But having said that, Morrowind's dungeon design is superior to Oblivion by a massive factor. So, we're still better than most of the other Elder Scrolls games out there. It's just Skyrim, I have to admit, has better dungeon design. It's just unfortunate that all the other gameplay elements in Skyrim just are kind of lackluster.
Yes, the dungeons in Skyrim were pretty fun. I think my main complaint about them was how conveniently the secret door leads you right back to the beginning of the dungeon.
Oh, yeah, that's a little too convenient for my liking, but still, their dungeon design was quite excellent in Skyrim. I don't think they used any of the copy and pasted dungeon designs of Oblivion. But, I mean, Morrowind dungeon design does certainly have its positives, like Arkenthand, and also Arkenthand, and mostly Arkenthand. Really, kind of having a hard time thinking of other ones.
Arkenthand is a good example, though. I remember getting lost in there many times starting the game, and like you said, I don't remember that happening in too many of the other dungeons except for the first sixth house space you go into. I think it's Ilnubi or something like that. I think that one was, or maybe no. I think it was Mamea, that other sixth house base you go into. I started getting lost in one of those.
Oh yeah, my issue with sixth house bases though is that they're not always the most fun. You need that sort of loot incentive to go into dungeons sometimes. Like a Duma dungeon, there's Duma artifacts all over the place. You're excited, you're looking for loot to, add to your collection. But with six house bases, there's not quite as much loot incentive there, so the dungeons kind of feel a bit more, tedious rather than fun.
You mean you don't grab all that corpus meat to take it back to town to sell?
Oh, no, 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 no. I think I grabbed like 2 or 3 pieces and to a collection somewhere, and then it's like, oh gosh, there's just so much of it.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue into we've got our first question from that was submitted by Lafak. He's asking, so how do you, Darkelfguy, tackle cavern design?
Well, my sort of take on cavern design is going to be a little bit different than some people, I suppose. I prefer my caverns to be more claustrophobic, close-quartered and highly detailed. So, a lot of people, choose to make custom caverns by, taking hundreds and hundreds of rocks, and instead of using the actual cavern tile sets, using those hundreds of rocks to create a path. And, I don't really do that so much myself. I prefer using the cavern tile set that's already there in Morrowind. So I take that cavern tile set, I sort of make a layout of the cavern that I want to make, and usually with a few open-air chambers. I like to have at least 2 to 3 open-air chambers, per interior cell of each cavern that I'm making, because it's important to have, the sort of open areas where you can have more dynamic range of combat encounters. And then after that, I start adding in hundreds and hundreds of these rocks to the cavern walls. And, boulders, roots, vines, grass, mushrooms. I try to sprinkle in all that at, sort of semi-irregular intervals to, sort of add this illusion of this being a natural cavern. And after that, I start adding in, the rest of the stuff, like the, for Smuggler's Caves, Smuggler platforms, docks, and, little hidden loot nooks and crannies. Like, sometimes I like to build shelves into the cavern walls themselves, and have, little loot caches there for people to find. And one of the things I try to aim, towards with cavern design is when I'm doing smuggler, areas or other areas that are inhabited by people, is I try to make them feel like they're actually inhabited by people and not just, people living in a dank and dark cave, because realistically, if you've got a bunch of smugglers living in a cave, they're going to start, making that place their home. They're not just going to lie down in the cold darkness and, just be fine with that. I mean, people tend to like living in places where they feel somewhat comfortable. So, I like to have areas like dining areas, kitchen areas, and things like that in the cavern as well. And, to other types of caverns, like, say, caverns that are mixed in with ancient ruins of lofty tombs, I like to spread out a lot of, pillars and walls that are just sort of intermixed with the cavern to make them feel like you're exploring some ancient ruins. So, like, you're exploring Daedric ruins, for example, you'll have these cave segments that are, still richly detailed with rocks and vines and moss and grass and all that, but also have these bits of ruined wall pieces and pillars just sticking out of the walls here and there as well to, really give that sort of feeling of exploring something ancient.
So I haven't caught up on all of your your videos that you've released recently, but it sounds to me like if you haven't yet, you should probably do a Let's Mod a cavern.
Oh yeah, we have actually. That was Let's Mod Morrowind Episode 3. We designed a, sort of Smuggler's Cavern for Mod Town 2015 actually. I think it ended up being 3 hours long, which is ridiculous, but I keep meaning to go back and finish that dungeon, but I just haven't found the time yet.
Well, with all the detail you walked through, it doesn't surprise me that it ended up being that long of a video. But Lafak, if you're watching, if you're listening, you should go check out that old Let's Play. That would be an interesting thing to watch, and I'll have to do the same. So we've got a couple more questions here from Lafak, actually. So the next question from Lafak is, how do you get the idea for a mod? And we touched on this one maybe a little bit before when we were talking about inspiration, but do you have anything else to expound on here?
Well, I don't know if there's an exact process for getting an idea for a mod. Most of the time, my ideas come to me just, sort of randomly. and then I frantically, search for a notepad or, jump to a computer terminal and quickly write it down so I don't forget it. And I probably have dozens of these little, notepad documents on my computer with, like quest idea or mod idea or dungeon idea. I just, wrote down really fast, and sometimes they turn into mods, and, well, sometimes they don't. Other times, it sometimes helps to just start writing and see what, pops up. Sometimes you'll get a creative idea, sometimes you'll just get a bunch of, stream of consciousness, but, sometimes just that stream of consciousness can eventually lead to something interesting.
If I remember correctly, on the old Bedsoft forums, I think we used to have a thread on there like for mod ideas, like mod idea sharing and that sort of a thing.
Yeah, I think we might have. Never actually took much of a look at it myself, but, it was something that was there along with, threads for, general work in progress and, modders resources and things like that.
But at the very least, it sounds like you've got a nice repository of ideas to come back to whenever you eventually end up with time. Of course, I don't know if we want you to have time to mod or if we, then we stop getting as many videos. So it's obviously you just need to invent some sort of a way that you can have more hours in the day, Darkelfguy.
Oh yeah, I would kill for some sort of time suspension field. I mean, that'd be perfect.
Wouldn't we all? Okay, and the last one from LaFox says, while you are capable of taking care of most aspects of modding, it seems you have the most experience with dialogue and questing. What draws you to this specific part of modding?
Well, I would say that basically storytelling. For people who know me, they know I'm basically addicted to stories. I'm obsessed with them. I read hundreds of books, I watch tons of movies, TV shows, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I currently follow around 100 different webcomics. I am obsessed with stories. I really can't get enough of them. So my sort of appeal towards quests and dialogue in particular has to do more with me wanting to write my own stories. I mean, I think that's, what everyone who reads a lot wants to do is, write their own stories eventually. You read these fantastic worlds created by authors like George R. R. Martin, or, Brent Weeks, or Brandon Sanderson, and you want to, go out there and try and write your own sort of thing. And, I'd say that's really my main appeal there, is that I just want to write stories that people will be interested in and drawn into.
I think you and I have pretty similar tastes in reading there, and it kind of makes me wonder. So, you've obviously, tried your hand at writing your stories in Morrowind in the construction set. Have you ever expanded outside of the construction set for writing those stories?
Not really. I did try and, basically I had a bad idea for a book and I started writing it, but I only got like 5 pages in. The issue I find is that I'm so used to writing stories in a construction set sort of manner, with the player interaction, that I don't really know how to write without player interaction. It's sort of, a handicap that I've developed that I sort of need to get over. Because, when you're writing with a mod, you have this dialogue and, the player, interacts with a character and selects various dialogue topics, and I'm used to that sort of style of storytelling, which is a bit, non-linear to a degree. And so writing a linear story in a sort of novel format is a bit different, and I've had a bit of difficulty trying to branch out into that and, basically given up on that field.
Well, it sounds like you might be able to find a career writing choose your own adventure books.
I do have a ton of those lying around somewhere, good old City of Thieves and all.
Oh yeah, yep. I've collected quite a few of those myself. They were a favorite thing for me to check out from the library growing up. Good times.
Oh yeah, my interest was really sparked into them with that Anastasia mod that came out in 2004, 2005.
All right, so the next question comes from Pikachuno TM, who asks, "Is your palette for textures increasing with mods?"
I would say my taste for texture places is gradually improving. Basically, for about 10 years after Morrowind's release, I never downloaded a single texture replacer, and I just played vanilla Morrowind. I didn't start dabbling with graphics mods until probably 2012, and even then it was more for mod testing purposes. It's like my actual save games were still back in vanilla Morrowind. I didn't really play with them at all. And, gosh, I used to get my hopes up sometimes when I'd see a bunch of mods released on Morrowind Summit or Nexus, and be like, oh gosh, it's just a texture mod. Oh, good heavens. Why can't people just release content mods like quests and dungeons and landmasses or houses, things I can get excited about? But, I'm starting to get past that, sort of feeling of not really caring about texture mods. I do care about texture mods now. I'm starting to see why people like them so much. I can see now how it makes the game look better, and, sort of affects how a game feels. So, I would say my palette for texture mods is definitely improving the more I've been showcasing and looking at them.
Yeah, texture replacers can definitely change the feel of the game quite a bit. It brings to mind that Egyptian Vivek texture replacer. Yeah, I think probably one of the reasons we see a lot of these texture mods is it's a pretty accessible medium for people to work on. I mean, theoretically, they don't even have to open up the construction set or the game if they don't want to test it out. Or I guess I should say the construction set. Of course, they're going to test it out in the game, but theoretically, they can avoid the construction set entirely and just work in Photoshop or GIMP or whatever they use to make these textures and such. So it's I think it's pretty easy for certain types of artistic people to jump into.
Oh yeah, it doesn't really seem easier from my perspective because I'm not really the artsy type to really be able to sort of figure out how textures work and feel together. But I guess for some people who prefer Photoshop to the construction set, it would probably be easier. Yeah.
So we've got a few more questions, actually a number more questions submitted by some people. So the next series are from Jason's 073, Enclave Killer, and Ducade, who all have questions that are primarily focused around the YouTube channel that you're running here. So we'll start with Jason, who asks, his first question is, Darkelfguy, your roles as the spokesperson, promoter, and filmmaker of the community must be demanding. Have those roles made it difficult to continue your own mods and personal projects for Morrowind? If so, do you miss working on them?
Oh yes, definitely, without a doubt. The channel is very demanding. It takes up most of my free time. Honestly, I do miss modding quite a bit. I don't have the time with the channel to really work a lot on mods, and it is something I dearly miss. I mean, I used to be able to, and this is one of my favorite memories actually, back when I was in my old apartment in Rolla, there was a time in 2014, we got snowed in, about 2 feet of snow at my door. I had absolutely no reason to leave the apartment, so I just stayed in the entire week and just did modding. Writing thousands of words, designing dungeons, doing all sorts of things, and it is one of the best memories I've ever had. I would like to be able to do that all the time, obviously, but the channel does take precedence, and as such, I don't really get the mods so much anymore.
So your Patreon supporters managed to donate a new desktop computer, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe the next campaign should be for an assistant to help you out with the video editing, then leaving you more time for mod making.
Oh, yeah, I wish it were, so simple, but, the issue with relying on other people is that, well, people tend to disappear, so it's a dream I've had, of someday retiring and giving the channel off to someone else, some poor naive sucker who can be convinced to just sacrifice their lives for the greater good, the greater good, and I don't know if that's ever going to happen, and if it did, I don't know if they would be dedicated enough to keep up the work for a long period of time. A lot of, ambitious projects like this get started and then they disappear relatively quickly. I mean, not to throw shade at anyone in particular, but you may remember that the Morrowind Modding Wiki was one of the other projects that came out of your Future of Morrowind thread, and Brookham's has been gone for what, like 2 years now? The Morrowind Modding Wiki hasn't even been updated in the past few months, and that project has sort of fallen through. For projects like Morrowind Modding Showcases, you need someone who's dedicated that's going to stick around. I have, thought about maybe someday making it a communal effort, getting maybe a dozen or so community leaders, giving them access, and then having them upload videos. But I don't know. That's something that I'll just have to kick down the road for sometime in the future.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I don't know what kind of a maniac would sign up to run a showcasing channel like this.
Well, clearly I was pretty insane when I started it. I mean, I basically sacrificed my entire modding career for it.
But as we all know, we've gotten a lot of great videos out of it. So I know I, for one, appreciate the content that's come out of it, but absolutely understand the sacrifices you've made to be able to keep churning out this much content. But I just hope you're able to find that balance. As long as you got a good work to life, or I should say work to modding balance, then I think things will work out.
Well, yeah, that's the dream. Hopefully, one day I can, get to it. I am trying to, start more of a video queue, get more videos finished. So hopefully, in the future, perhaps in several months, I'll be able to do daily modding sessions again.
And moving on to this is Jason's next question. He asks, your modding tutorials have been popular and have inspired several modders, including myself, who had only done testing before, to begin experimenting with making their own mods. Do you hope to continue that line of videos?
Oh, yes, definitely. I think Let's Mod Morrowind is one of the more, well, creative and perhaps unique video series on the channel, and it would be my sincere hope to be able to continue that and to continue encouraging new modders to try modding. Except, of course, you get back to the problem that I never have time to actually mod. So, now a bit of a catch-22 there. It's a video series for Morrowind Modding Showcases, but it requires modding, and I'm already so busy with video series for Morrowind Modding Showcases, I don't have time to mod. I am going to try and get again, like I mentioned before, a queue of videos for Let's Mod Morrowind. My goal is to get 5 episodes of Let's Mod Morrowind finished by the end of January of next year, and then have that series return as a recurring segment on a regular schedule, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and thinking on the fly here, we've got a couple other modders, such as London Rook and Danae, and I think perhaps Abode as well, who's a pretty long time modder with us, who have done their own modding, sort of let's mod sort of videos and such. You mentioned collaborative effort. It might be something to consider. Let's mod videos, especially when you don't have time for that sort of a modding. Perhaps other modders in the community could make some recordings and provide them to get that exposure and content onto this channel.
Oh yeah, we've had some offers to consider doing something like 3D modeling for a Let's Mod Morrowind episode, but yeah, London Rook's his Twitch stream is already fantastically informative, and I do highly encourage people to just go check that out if they want more sort of similar content to Let's Mod Morrowind.
All right, so we will go to the next question from Jason. I noticed that Morrowind Modding Showcases, so being primarily a Morrowind project, has branched out into doing some videos that cover Oblivion and Skyrim content. What were the reasons for this decision? Has it impacted the number of videos you'd like to make for Morrowind?
Well, the reason for branching out into Oblivion is because we got a lot of requests to branch out into Oblivion, and after doing some research, it turns out that Oblivion does not have any active showcasing videos, or channels, I should say, at all. It seems like the Oblivion modding community, despite being fairly active, does not have a showcaser or promoter. And so we're just, kind of trying to fill in the gap a little bit, I suppose. Provide a few video showcases for some of the newer and also older mods that are available for Oblivion. And there is a lot of overlap between Oblivion and Morrowind's modders. Uh, Actually, about probably close to 10 to 15% of the mods that we showcased for Oblivion were made by Morrowind modders, so there's a very clear and obvious overlap there. So to a degree, we're just supporting our Morrowind modders just for a different game. But as for whether or not it's impacting the Morrowind video schedule, I would say not really. You'll notice there's a lot more Morrowind videos that come out on the average week and the average month than there are Oblivion videos. I think right now we have 300 Morrowind videos, more or less. Maybe 35 to maybe 40 Oblivion videos, and then we have 2 Skyrim videos. We were, considering branching out into Skyrim for a bit, but we've decided, or rather I've decided to basically not really get into it, because there's been a bit of drama in the Skyrim modding community recently. There's been a bunch of Skyrim modders who are angry at YouTubers for some reason for showcasing the mods. And it just doesn't seem like it's worth the effort, to go into a hostile environment where there's already a ton of competing channels, and then try and just deal with all that drama. It doesn't seem like something I want to do. I mean, yes, that would bring a lot of views and, subscribers to the channel, but at the end of the day, I just don't think it's worth the trouble.
And I recall from looking at some of the Oblivion videos that you have done on the channel, I think that the Oblivion community was pretty grateful and enjoyed seeing those mods get showcased for them.
Oh, yeah, they're actually, they're pretty loyal subscribers, I would say. There's obviously not as many of them as are Morrowind subscribers, but they're very loyal and also very insistent that we continue the Oblivion Modding Showcases series, which we are going to eventually. Right now we have episode 6 in production, and my goal is to get up to episode 15 finished completely before we make the series a regular recurring segment again. Because, trying to build up that queue again, I'd like to have Oblivion Modding Showcases be a weekly series, but not at the cost of, Morrowind Modding Showcases, which is why it's taking so long to get the next episode out.
Just as long as the acronym for the channel never becomes OMS, I think we'll all allow it.
Oh yes, I'm big on staying true to your roots. There have been too many Morrowind websites and Morrowind platforms that have changed their names just to be more inclusive to the rest of the Elder Scrolls. The Nexus, in particular, started out as a Morrowind fan site with a Morrowind name, and now it's just Nexus Mods, and most people associate it with Skyrim and Fallout 4, which is ridiculous, because, again, it started out as a Morrowind website.
Yeah, I think and Nexus has really expanded too, because I don't even know exactly how many games they showcase, but they've got a slew of them on there.
Oh yeah, they'll cover any game now. Actually, you can actually put in a request for any game that you want, and they'll set up a section for it with mods and everything, which is kind of filling in the shoes of what IGN and RPG Planet kind of left behind in the void there when they pulled out and shut down all the Planet websites.
Right. So the next question from Jason asks, your videos are extremely high quality. Do you have a background or career ambition in the film industry?
Oh, heavens no, definitely not. No, not at all. Basically, I would actually argue that my videos are terrible. I mean, compare them to any other YouTuber out there, and you'll notice that they're of decidedly lesser quality. And especially our first episode, geez, that was a mess. I'm sure you remember that. Terrible video quality. Just a general mess of audio recording. And then the second episode, the frame rate issues on that were just staggering. We have improved the videos a little bit over time, but I would not say I have a background in video recording at all. I basically have no idea what I'm doing and just sort of, going along for what I can do.
Well, I think you're being a little hard on yourself. I think we're stumbling around in the dark. You're doing a really good job.
Oh, well, thank you, and, well, hopefully we can get the videos up to a higher quality in the future.
I'm sure they will. So the last one from Jason asks, over the last several years, you've interviewed representatives of many of the province projects, such as Tamriel Rebuilt, Cyrodiil, Skyrim, etc. Are you optimistic about the future of these projects? Have you found that your interviews have inspired more people to join them?
Well, with regards to optimism, I would say yes, of course I'm optimistic. I mean, projects like Terry Built, Project Cyrodiil, Skyrim Mother Norns, you have to remember that all those projects are over a decade old. I mean, at a certain point, a project reaches a particular threshold point where, they're just going to continue no matter what, because they've already been in production for so long, they've already survived so many staff changes, that it just seems inevitable that they are just going to continue indefinitely, at least, until Morrowind Modding itself dies. And even then they might, survive past the heat death of the Morrowind Modding universe. But as for whether or not anyone has actually, signed up to any of the province teams because of my interviews, I'm less optimistic about that. There might be one, or using a very liberal estimate, 2 people who have signed up to the Terran-Built or Project Tamriel teams because of our interviews and videos. I would not say the number is very high, which is unfortunate, because more people should definitely sign up for those projects. Every little bit helps. If you just submit a single interior, that's one less interior that the core project team members don't have to worry about. Every little bit. More people should definitely sign up.
Yeah, I think on the Morrowind Discord, there's been this ongoing joke that all of these large province projects are going to release in the year 2090, and that's going to be the big mod or big year of Morrowind modding when all these projects get released. Now, that's maybe a bit pessimistic of a viewpoint, but it's definitely those projects are something that everybody likes talking about and watching, and like you said, they're still developing. They have I've seen Tamriel Rebuilt get a few new modders, every once in a while, so it's interesting to watch them.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think at a certain point, the project's age has something to do with the fact that it's going to probably continue. I mean, Town Rebuilt is 16 years old now. Skyrim Home of the Norns is, I believe, 12 years old now. Province Cyrodiil, 10 years old. At a certain point, these projects just aren't going to die unless the entire modding community dies with it. So they'll continue on for sure.
I didn't even realize that the province Cyrodiil and Skyrim Home of the Nords were that old, man. I remember when the forums started. I think it was Lady Nerevar hosted the Skyrim Home of the Nords forums, if I'm not remembering incorrectly. And yeah, I remember that started. Makes me feel old. I didn't even realize I was 12 years ago.
Oh yeah, it was originally started by the start in 2005. So yeah, it's about 12 years old now, I think.
So now we'll move on to the next questioner, who is Enclave Killer. And first question, I think this may be coming from personal experience for him. Enclave Killer asks, Darkelfguy, does it feel weird to be an idol of sorts to new modders?
It's definitely a bit strange. I've never been a very public figure in the Morrowind modding community. I've been in this community since 2003, but I had a post count of less than 25 until, on the Bethesda forums anyway, until 2014. So, I've been a active member of the community in that I've submitted mods, but I've never been a very talkative fellow or, someone that people see on a regular basis. I've always been, there in the background, kind of, writing reviews for mods, posting them on Planet Elder Scrolls and things like that. To be considered an idol for newer modders is very strange to me. I'm a rather antisocial person, so, I'm the sort of person that tries to find the darkest corner to hide in, so being admired for the Morrowind Modding Showcases is a bit strange and very different for me, I would say.
Well, I think we can all agree going from 25 posts on the old forum to being a pillar of the community, leading the largest YouTube channel we've got for the Morrowind modding community is it's a pretty big change of pace for you.
Oh, yes, definitely. It's like I get YouTube comments and messages every single day, and it's like before, I might get a message every year, and it's just very different change of pace.
I can imagine it's difficult to keep up with all the messages and YouTube comments and such that you get.
Oh yeah, and it kind of shows. People who message me probably know from experience that I take a really long time to respond. Again, it's part of my antisocial nature. It's just I'm not usually very talkative, and I don't, and that extends to my online presence as well. It's like I'm not really one to talk a lot personally on messages and things, aside from the conversations that you and me had back on the Bethesda forums. We had some pretty detailed private messages going back and forth, but other than that, I'm just not that social of a person, so keeping up with all these messages and the social media networks that are required for the channel, like Tumblr and Facebook, that's been really difficult to just keep up with.
I'm glad we had those conversations though. Otherwise, this channel might not even be around. It was kind of the inception of it back then.
Oh yeah, that and the future of Morrowind thread.
Yeah, that was an interesting time whenever I wrote that thread. So I think things have maybe slowed down a little bit since then. And I know even I haven't necessarily kept up very well with my own advice for leaving feedback for new modders and stuff. But I think the good thing is, with the old Bedsoft forums dying and transitioning to Discord and such, it's been an interesting change of pace. Just you know being able to provide live support to certain new modders who show up, asking questions in the server and stuff. And it's not like it's a new media or anything, because we've had a couple Skype modding groups and that sort of, and TeamSpeak and that sort of a thing that we've had in the past. But it's been an interesting change of pace over the last few years.
Oh yeah, I'm not entirely sure if I would say things have slowed down, at least not on mod releases anyway. We're on, scheduled to have a pretty high mod turnout this year, potentially 700 if things keep the way they're going, which would be, about 100 mods more than last year, which last year was about 100 more mods than 2015, and that was 200 mods more than 2014, so as far as mod releases go, the community is doing pretty well, but, the Bethesda forums shutting down has really shut down the heart and soul of the, social networking branch of the community. I think most people are sort of transitioning towards Reddit a bit more these days. We have that new TS3 mods Reddit that was launched this last week, which is a Reddit exclusively for discussing mods for Morrowind and modders and things like that. And that's been pretty active. But we'll see whether or not it actually, sticks around. Again, like Morrowind Modding Wiki kind of just disappeared after a while.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of the new subreddit. I'll have to go check it out. I know with the forums being shut down by I guess ZeniMax. I'm not sure. I guess it was ZeniMax rather than Bethesda, but I know there's been a number of modders and players who have been kind of looking for a new forum to transition to. I know a few people have transitioned to Bethesda.net. I tried. I could not get over the formatting and the odd social media focus of the forum. So I've started looking at the Nexus forums a little bit, but I think it's hard for me to get over what I'm used to back on the old Bedsoft forums.
Oh, yeah, same here. The new ZeniMax forums are just, gosh, they're terrible. I don't understand what's wrong with these youngsters these days, with all those social media networks and all this other nonsense. I mean, I know I'm only 27 years old, but seriously, what was wrong with the good old-fashioned bulletin board and forum board? We don't need the rest of this nonsense.
And the unfortunate thing is that, things like, Reddit and Discord are useful areas to communicate, but they don't necessarily have the stability and longevity that forums seem to be able to control.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to have a long discussion and forum thread on Reddit or Discord, because inevitably it's going to get buried, and that, That's sort of something that's important to have, especially with threads like those mod ideas, like you were talking about before, the general work in progress threads. I mean, right now our best option for that is the Great House Frigaty forums, but of course those are sort of a mixed bag themselves.
Yeah, I haven't used the Great House Fliggerty forums for a little while here. I used to be pretty active there, and uh, I was a scribe or whatever they called it on the Morrowind Modding History site. But I think after Fliggerty kind of went AWOL, I stopped frequenting that area, and it seemed like the forum slowed down significantly. Though obviously that suite of sites is still a very good resource for the modding in general, obviously.
Yeah, now that Fliggerty has returned, I'm hoping things get back to a more active state, but we'll have to see.
He returned? How did I not hear this?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess you just weren't reading the news posts over on Great House Fliggerty. You got to stop in every once in a while. I mean, he's still pretty inconsistent, but it sounds like he's getting close to potentially releasing something from Morrowind History 2.0.
I will have to stop over there. I mean, that was kind of the big thing that was uh left us hanging with was yeah, MMH 2.0. So I'll swing over there and check it out.
Yeah, he was actually supposed to be in our next podcast that we were supposed to do for the Morrowind 15th anniversary, but I still haven't gotten a reply back on when he's going to be available, so the podcasts have kind of been in limbo for a little while.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And have you? I don't remember. Did you manage to get him for a one-on-one interview? That would be uh pretty interesting for Fliggerty. He's been a very influential part of the community, obviously.
Oh, yeah, I've tried, but he really only, communicates directly through, Drakemore and the other, core members of the Great House Frigaty website. So it's, kind of gotten a bit of a delay in responses. So, I send a message to one of them, they send a message to Fliggerty, Fliggerty sends a message back, they send a message to me, and on it goes. So I've never gotten a straight response on a one-on-one interview, unfortunately.
That is unfortunate. Well, hopefully he'll become a little bit more directly involved. That'd be pretty amazing. But I guess we'll have to wait and see what time brings there. All right, so let's get the last question from Enclave Killer. We went on a bit of a tangent there, but his question is a bit unrelated. Well, it's unrelated to Morrowind, but it's something else that I know you were interested in for a while at least. He asks, "Do you still touch Minecraft and the server?"
Not really. After we closed down Kingdoms of Redaynia in 2015, I've, pretty much stayed away from Minecraft. I don't really have time for it. Minecraft is kind of a big time sink in itself, and with the channel and also modding that I would really like to get back to, there's just nowhere near enough time in the day for even potentially considering Minecraft or even starting another Minecraft server.
Having played some Minecraft myself, I can understand that. Just the fact that trying to juggle the making the videos and wanting to mod doesn't leave any room for playing with blocks.
Oh no, it really doesn't. I mean, especially since maintaining a server takes hundreds of hours, over a course of time to maintain. And good heavens, there's no way with everything that I do already. There's no way to add that to the jumble.
Of course. Yes. Let's move on to another question. This time it's submitted by Ducade, and this is a bit lengthy, but I'll read through it. I think it's an interesting one. So Ducade asks, one thing that I feel is lacking in the world of mod showcasing is functional builds for games. For example, providing people with a video that demonstrates a build to achieve a certain graphical look by talking about a combination of texture, mesh, lighting, etc. mods that work together nicely and offer a fresh look and can stand as a reasonable alternative to MSGO, for instance. Similarly, builds that enhance a certain aspect of the gameplay. Collection of mods that work together in harmony and offer the player something valuable. Is there any chance that is something you would be interested in showcasing?
Well, of course, that would be something I'm interested in showcasing, but the problem of these sort of builds is, well, it's kind of hard to maintain them. I mean, that was the problem with MGSO, is that MGSO was originally supposed to be a, well, mod project that was constantly maintained. That was Kingpix's original vision, is that it would constantly be updated. But obviously, he's run out of time to do that sort of thing. He briefly came back in 2014 and started working on an update to MGSO 3.0, but then just kind of disappeared again. And, you know, for a giant build like that, graphic, gameplay, or otherwise, you're going to need to be able to constantly update and monitor it as new mods get released. And it's just, it's something that isn't particularly practical. Not making it the same way as MGSO anyway, where it's an executable package. With the Morrowind Step Guide, that's probably as practical as you're going to get. And, one of these days, I would like to showcase the Morrowind Step Guide, install the mods manually and showcase the results, but that's going to take quite a bit of time just doing that, and, again, time constraints have sort of forced me to postpone doing any showcases of the Morrowind Step Guide until I have a bit more time on my hands.
And I know one of the things that made projects like Kingpix's rather difficult was trying to respect various modders' wishes when trying to merge them in.
Oh yes, and that's definitely the way to go. You should always contact modders and definitely give them credit for their work when making these sort of compilation packages. Just don't do another bloody Morrowind 2011. That was a disaster, and gosh, the sleazy journalism that came out of that from the mainstream game media is something I'm still disgusted by, websites like Joystick and Kotaku who just ran with stories that were blatantly false about, how toxic the Morrowind modding community is back in 2010. Gosh, those really made me mad.
Yeah, I remember when those were being published. It was, like you said, a bit of a frustrating time. I think that's one of the reasons why trying to be respectful of modders' wishes and how they want their creations to be handled makes things like the step guide a good method for sharing these sorts of builds, like Ducade refers to it as.
Oh yeah, but the important thing is that you still do need to maintain even something like the Morrowind Step Guide, and add in new mods as they get released. And in terms of graphics, it does look like Flash 3 keeps releasing a ton of great PBR supported mods, and that's hopefully something that will be included into the Morrowind Step Guide going into the future, as more of these amazing replaces being put out by Flash 3, Darknut, and all these other great graphics modders.
Absolutely. So moving on to the next question now. This is going in a different direction, but what do you think about the other Elder Scrolls games, such as Oblivion, Skyrim, and Elder Scrolls Online?
To be completely honest, I was not a huge fan of Oblivion. Obviously, I played it for a while. I think I played it from 2006 to about 2007, but there was this big wave of Morrowind modders that, jumped ship to Oblivion immediately after it released, and then immediately jumped ship back to Morrowind going into 2007 because, Oblivion was kind of a generic game. I will say that the mods for Oblivion do really help make the game playable again, especially things like Ascaro's Oblivion Overhaul mod, and, some of the new graphics mods, like the new version of Oblivion Reloaded, really do give it a nice, bit of shine and make it playable to a degree. But vanilla Oblivion is just, to my mind, unplayable at this rate. I mean, going from Morrowind to Oblivion, it's ridiculous. As for Skyrim, I do like Skyrim, but I like Skyrim in small amounts, small play sessions, like maybe 2-3 hours max. Skyrim isn't really a game that I can play for a long period of time without getting bored at the tedium, I suppose. I mean, from a gameplay perspective, Skyrim is a bit shallow. It's more, action-based. It's, something good for a bit of action, and fun for, again, that 2 to 3 hour spectrum, but anything after that is just going to start, feeling tedious. Unlike, with Morrowind, where you get immersed in the world and can just play it for hours on end. And as for the Elder Scrolls Online, I'm going to be one of the odd people out here and say that I do actually like the Elder Scrolls Online. I liked a lot of their original concepts, and I thought it was a pretty solid MMO when it came out. That said, it's clearly not quite the same thing as an actual Elder Scrolls game, and I am a bit miffed that they're kind of trying to replace Morrowind now with the Morrowind expansion. I mean, yeah, it looks cool and all, but, why is Seyda Neen still there, for Pete's bloody sake? And kind of seems like they're just trying to get people to move on from the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind and just stop playing ESO, which I don't think that many people are going to do, but ESO itself, for what it is, of course, a fun game to play.
Yeah, I've heard similar comments about Elder Scrolls Online being good for an MMO. I haven't played it too much. I played the original beta whenever it came out and haven't played it since then. But I know for me, one of my biggest gripes with it is the lore, since I'm a bit of a lore enthusiast for the Elder Scrolls, and they have some interesting discrepancies, quite a few of them that crop up in ESO. But to your other point about the Morrowind expansion, I know that's been one that I think my biggest gripe with the game came with that, because now anytime you try to do a Google search for anything Morrowind related, it's tainted by the Elder Scrolls Online expansion. It's making it much, at least partially, more difficult to find things online.
Oh yeah, especially on Tumblr, it's like, I used to just be able to search for Morrowind and get a bunch of Morrowind screenshots, and now it's all this ESO nonsense, with those ugly Telvanni mushrooms and their disturbing silt striters and netches, and their weird-looking gwars. I mean, what was wrong with Morrowind's gwars? I mean, why they changed the art design there? It's just driving me crazy.
Oh yeah, the Elder Scrolls 3 Guars, makes you want to pet them. The Elder Scrolls Online just made them look angry. They don't look as friendly and cute as the Guar and Morrowind.
Oh yeah, so yeah, the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind gwars are, the best. I mean, they purr, they make great pets, presumably, except for when they, destroy your boots or shoes or what have you, but gosh, that's one of the things I loved about the original Morrowind, and gosh, I do not like the art design direction of ESO's Morrowind. I mean, I like some parts of it. Their vision of Balmora is certainly quite nice looking, but, the rest is, eesh. What? Why do you have to mess around the original art design? I don't understand.
Yeah, I think the Telvanni buildings were the biggest offender. They looked a bit like, bloated corpus meat or something like that. But I will say that the Velothi textures and that design was interesting. It looked nice for a very very elegant, I guess, take on the tile set.
Oh yeah, I think they hit the right notes with the Velothi, Hlolu, and also the indoor architecture sets that are on the mainland, but, I still have... I don't know how I feel about that Morrowind expansion. I mean, it feels more opportunistic than, actually releasing something that would improve ESO as a whole.
Yeah, I'll try to avoid being too negative in this interview, but I think it'll be pretty hard to improve Elder Scrolls Online too much. All right, so with that, I think we can move on to the next question, which this is semi-related, and this is, I think, our last user-submitted question, which comes from AutoClock, and he asked, what from Morrowind would you implement in Elder Scrolls 6 if you could? Not a mod, an actual vanilla game feature.
Alright, now that's kind of difficult. Let's see, I think possibly the biggest thing would be hand-placed, non-leveled loot. Like unique loot that you can find in dungeons and things like that. And, just in general, more random loot variation instead of like in Skyrim and Oblivion, where you had the level loot drops and things of that nature. I mean, it was a bit, better in Skyrim, but still pretty noticeable. That's why mods like Morrow Loot are so popular for Skyrim, is because, it adds that unique nature of loot again. And that's pretty important with dungeon design, because, the loot incentive can make or break a dungeon, and you need to have that, variety of potential of maybe finding something good in this dungeon that is unique, potentially even overly powerful. You need to put the possibility there, so it it helps with the dungeon design to make it more fun, I guess, would be the best way to explain it. That was the weakest point with Skyrim's dungeon design, was the loot system. And, if I could just add a second thing, probably Morrowind's enchanting system. I mean, let's face it, Skyrim's enchanting system and indeed Oblivion's enchanting system both kind of were lackluster. And for that matter, the magic system, really, the entire magic system. I would take Morrowind's magic system over Skyrim and Oblivion any day, but, I'm adding things on here. If I were to use one feature, it would be the unique loot system.
Yeah, and I think Oblivion was probably just the worst with the random loot. That was the one where you eventually start getting the bandits that are all wearing glass armor and that sort of a thing.
Oh yes, that was ridiculous. I mean, glass armor felt like a rare and valuable find in Morrowind, because there was how much glass armor? There were maybe 3 sets of glass armor in the entire game. When you found a piece of it, you felt like you found something that was just this cool and unique thing that you wanted to treasure. You didn't want to sell it off to the first merchant you see. You wanted to keep it, because there's only so much of it. It's rare. You want to hoard it into your house and put it into a giant pile of other items that only you and you alone can, look at each day as you wake up from your storm bed from the person that you murdered earlier.
Oh yeah, I agree, and that extends to the Daedric armor as well, which I think Morrowind did the best out of any of the games. Where in Morrowind, it's like a collectible set, right? I think I'm trying to remember the specifics, and I'll probably be wrong on this, but I think there is one set of Daedric armor in the entire game, aside from the set that Dive Fire is wearing, of course.
Yeah, that sounds right. I think that's all of them right there. Just that 2 sets of Daedric armor. And, of course, it's not exactly easy to kill the one NPC, since, of course, he's related to the main quest, and also, does he teleport you if you attack him? Or he does something, doesn't he?
No, not in the vanilla game. He doesn't have any special things that he does, though he does have that, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't played the game much, but he's got an amulet nearby that teleports you to a special location if you steal it.
Alright, I thought there was something there, I just couldn't remember what.
Well, maybe you have the beginnings of a mod idea. You need to put that in a notepad document.
No, yeah, I'll add it to the stacks 100 already cluttering my hard drives here.
Very good. So once you get a little bit more time somehow, then you can get to that stack. So all right. So let's see. Let's move on to the next question here. So are there any other games outside of the Elder Scrolls that you enjoy playing? And if so, what do you like about them?
Well, I don't know if this goes for everyone, but I'm more of a jack-of-all-trades gamer, really. I don't really stick to one particular genre. In fact, if you were to look at my entire game collection, you probably wouldn't even think I was a RPG gamer in particular, because RPGs probably make up less than 5% of my entire game collection. I enjoy a variety of games. I enjoy action games, racing games, FPS games. I used to play a ton of FPS. And in fact, I was the second highest rated Call of Duty 2 player on my Call of Duty 2 server back in the day. That was, the original Call of Duty 2, obviously, back in 2005, and, I guess 2006 a bit as well. I used to love FPS games like that, Halo, Call of Duty 2, Halo PC in particular. More recently, Call of Juarez, I think it's called, Gunslinger, the sort of arcade shooter that's on Steam. I also like indie games and, just tons of stuff. What I look for in, game is either, story or, some sort of unique gameplay mechanic. Sometimes I like building things. I love City Skylines and SimCity 4 for building things. I also love strategy games like Civilization. I spent more hours than I care to count in Civ 3, and then, Civ 4, Civ 5, as well as, really, I got a lot of my start with, basic modding with Empire Earth, actually. Also, Age of Empires, Stronghold 2, HD, Rise of Nations, just tons of games. So basically, I like pretty much everything except sports games and esports games, things like MOBAs and all that stuff. I couldn't care less about. I just want a good strategy game, or a good FPS game, or a good racing game, or a good RPG. Any of those I would be happy with.
Yes, that's certainly a wide assortment of games that you play, and I think my own Steam library would show quite a few of those as well. Um, but related to that, and you mentioned the strategy games. I know for me personally, I like making maps and such for Age of Empires and Command and Conquer and those sort of a thing. So building into the next question here. So did you mod any games before Morrowind?
Oh yes, like a lot of people, I got my modding start with strategy games like Empire Earth, Age of Empires, Warcraft, Warcraft 3, and also, count that Stronghold 2 HD had, I think it was some sort of map editor as well. I probably spent the most time in Empire Earth's map editor. Just messing around with various things, creating maps, trying to get the AI to behave, which the AI in Empire Earth was kind of terrible, so it never did. And, I also messed around with the map editor for Civ 3 quite a bit. I actually created my own version of Cyrodiil once in Civ 3 and had a bunch of different factions and stuff in there. I don't know what happened to that. It's probably still on my Windows Millennium Compact computer from 2000. Yeah, I did a lot of modding before Morrowind specifically, mostly, again, with just, those map editors that you find in strategy games.
And I don't think we had this on the list, but just out of curiosity, since you're mentioning, making a Cyrodiil map back in 2000, did you play any of the Elder Scrolls games prior to Morrowind, Daggerfell, Arena, Battlespire, and such?
Oh, no, I didn't make the map until, after I had played Morrowind. I think I made that map in 2003. It's just, my computer was a Windows Millennium Compact, so it was built in 2000. Really terrible computer, could barely run anything, couldn't even run Morrowind. I actually had to, when I first got Morrowind, I had to use my mother's Windows 98, because that was the only computer that could run it.
Yeah, those were the good old days, though, right? I remember my old ME, and then before that MS DOS, playing all those old games.
Oh yeah, I think my first introduction to PC gaming was probably SimTown on Windows 3.1. Yeah, we've come a really long ways since the Windows 3.1 days.
Yes, we have. And going back to the topic of modding here, have you been able to apply any of the skills you've learned from modding Morrowind anywhere else?
Oh yes, probably, definitely. I mean, most of the skills that I have developed from modding, I would say I've developed, creative writing, scripting, which led into programming, all that, basically started with modding Morrowind. So most of the skills that I do have today are largely in thanks to, the incentive to learn them in the first place for modding Morrowind. And, I'm a computer scientist. I got my degree in computer science, but my interest in programming was sparked by Morrowind's scripting language and, being able to create quests and things like that in the Morrowind construction set. So yeah, I would definitely say I've used those skills elsewhere.
And we've got a few final questions here. So, do you think there's anything the Morrowind modding community should be doing in order to continue to expand and grow in the coming years?
Well, the most important thing is, of course, to continue releasing mods. An active modding community is always going to be a happy modding community. As long as more mods are being released, more people are still going to play them, and, when newcomers arrive, it's sort of a motivational booster to see that the community is still alive and producing mods. Other than that, things that we aren't already doing is perhaps promoting our mods a bit more. I mean, obviously we promote mods on our modding showcases, but I would really like to see modders promote their mods a bit more on some of the more distant holdings of the Morrowind modding community, and just the Morrowind community in general. I mean, a lot of people forget about this, but, we do have Morrowind Reddit. We do have a Morrowind Steam forums, which are extremely active, though usually they're complaints about the game or, some other bug reports. But I think it would be nice to get, if, modders would release, have release threads or work in progress threads on some of these other platforms like Steam and Reddit as a way to engage people who are perhaps not otherwise, that involved in the modding community. It's all about making sure that you project the strength of our modding community out into the wider Morrowind player base that might not otherwise be entirely aware of everything that's going on here. And, that means involving more modding discussions over on the Morrowind Steam forums and the Morrowind Reddit, where, the more normal, I guess you might say, Morrowind players tend to hang out.
I think that's a very good recommendation. I'll have to keep that in mind myself. I know I have a tendency to kind of alienate myself and just focus on one particular form of media at a time just because I'm not much on social media or anything like that. So, but like you say, there's a lot of other people out there who enjoy the game and like talking about it in different areas. So yeah, that's a good point of advice. And on that topic, is there any other advice you'd like to give to new Morrowind modders out there?
The most important thing I can recommend to new modders is to just try things. Don't be intimidated by the construction set. Don't be afraid of trying to do more than you might think you're capable of, because you are capable of more. I mean, when I first started modding, I was terrified of scripting and questing, but at the end of the day, this stuff is easy. You just need to practice a bit with it. You need to be able to try it. Just go out there, mess around with it a bit, and see what happens. Because the first step in any real production of a great mod is to just go out there and try something first. And who knows, you might end up liking it, and you might make something great as a result.
And finally, is there anyone in the community you'd like to give a shout out to?
Again, can my response here be everyone? I mean, we've showcased mods from practically everyone in this community, and, we have a ton of awesome and amazing modders here that I'm just immensely proud of. They've just created so many great things that I love checking out myself, and the editor, and, on the channel. And, obviously, I'd like to give a shout out to you, Melchior, for, Lyithdonea and hosting this interview and, generally speaking, being a pillar of the community. Other people I'd like to give a shout out to include London Rook for doing the excellent work on the Project Outlander mod, the Province Cyrodiil team, the Skyrim Home of the Nords team, the Tower Built team. Also, of course, Superstar with Uber's Legacy, and hopefully that mod will continue and won't be delayed by this, recent issue of the HDD drive failing. And let's see. There's a ton of other people I'd like to give a mention, but More Eyes, who has been making the transition from being a modder to a game developer, actually, starting his own studio out in Las Vegas. Other people include Hang Him Higher, who is probably no longer with us, sadly, but who is an extremely talented quest modder that I really hope that his big quest mod gets finished one day, and hopefully we can finish Mod Town 2015 as well, where he had his one of his last modding contributions was in that. And oh gosh, Greatness 7, Enclave Killer, Autoclock, Train Wiz, Star Wars Gal 9875. The rest of the community, I would just like to say, thank you for continuing making so many great mods, and I really hope to be able to continue showcasing your mods in the future.
Well, I think I speak for all of us when I say I look forward to seeing how Morrowind Modding Showcases continues to develop Darkelfguy, and I gotta say it was an honor getting to interview you here this evening, and I hope we get to talk again soon.
Oh, well, thank you for hosting, and hopefully we'll be able to continue work on the channel and improve things, and of course, hopefully see more of your Lyithdonea mod in the future.
I hope so as well. Hopefully things are slowing down for me a little bit here, where I'm going to be able to dedicate some more time to modding. So I've been trying to buckle down and work on the quest line for it, so I've made a little bit of progress there, but obviously a long ways to go yet to complete the whole main quest.
Oh yeah, that's the goal. Always find more time for modding, and that's something that we're all striving for, one way or another.
Yep, it's a time-told story. Modders running out of time as they get older, responsibilities crop up, and just get busy with other things. So hopefully between all of us who are still actively modding, we can find the time to get some of these projects finished.
Oh yeah, definitely, and just thanks again for hosting this interview, and taking the time out of what might be otherwise modding time to conduct this interview for the modding channel.
Absolutely, it was my pleasure. Like I said at the beginning, I think it was about time that we got an interview from you.